I'm Katie Wesney from Enable Me, and I'm glad you've chosen to be here tonight. That choice alone shows you're someone who takes action rather than just hoping things will work out. Let's be honest, retirement planning can feel overwhelming, but here's what I've learned after years of helping Kiwis. The gap between where you are and where you want to be usually isn't as big as it seems. It just needs the right approach. Tonight, we're cutting through the complexity to focus on what actually matters. No jargon promise, just practical strategies for real life. Whether you're wondering if you've started too late or feeling uncertain about your path forward, you're in the right place. We're going to tackle the tough questions. How much do you actually need? What if you're behind? And most importantly, what can you do starting tomorrow? So get comfortable and let's turn your retirement from a source of worry into a plan you can get excited about. So, in terms of today, we've got a tight agenda. I will talk at pace because there is a lots to cover off. But please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. My amazing producer, Jessica, will collate all the questions. You've already submitted some amazing ones, and we'll go through them at the end. But in terms of the agenda, we're going to talk through retirement goals and time frame. How do you craft your own wealth plan? How do you optimize income and investments? Because they're two sides of the equation that are super important. We'll also talk about that decumulation phase and what that should look like from a strategic perspective, estate planning options, and as promised, we'll have the Q&A. So you might be thinking, who am I to tell you what to do with your money? So I am the head strategic coach at Enable Me. I've been here for the last decade. I work with amazing clients and I help coach our coaches nationwide. I'm a chartered accountant. I've been in this arena for a very long time. I'm old now. I bought and sold my own successful business. I've worked across Europe, US, and of course, New Zealand. I am a columnist and media commentator. And as an Enable Me coach, my whole job is to optimize outcomes for my clients and help them reach their financial potential. So, a little disclaimer, this presentation is provided for information purposes only. The content of this presentation is not intended as a substitute for regulated financial advice. Of course, I would love to give you regulated financial advice, but to do so, I would need to meet with you in person. As a coach, we see lots of amazing people. We'll have a wee special at the end of the session. If anything sparks your interest and you want to dive deeper with myself or one of our amazing coaches up and down the country, we have an offer tonight for you. Okay, first we're going to start off with a little bit of a poll. I'm really interested to lift the hood so I can be very targeted in terms of audience. So, are you confident you're on track to fund your retirement? So, yes, I'm confident I have enough. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'll be okay. Nope, I am not on track, or I don't have any plans to fund retirement. So, I'll just give you a few seconds to just pick your answer, and I'll just make sure that we address the audience appropriately. It's enough time, surely. Um, okay, so I love that 4% of you are confident. Well done. Most of us think that we're either maybe okay or absolutely not on track, and 4% haven't thought about it. Okay, that's super interesting. Good spread. And in terms of, just going to get back to my last slide. We all want a comfortable retirement, but some of us are walking around hoping we're on track, but we don't know how we're actually tracking. And in terms of this webinar delivery, we're trying to kind of lift the hood and understand where you're at. And in terms of the current reality for lots of retirees, is many feel that they have to compromise on what they envisage for a comfortable retirement. And unless we get more deliberate in our financial plan, this could look worse for the next generation because, again, we've got lots of challenges that we need to face head on. So if you are feeling stuck, as you see from our questionnaire, you are not alone. But in terms of stats, 56% of retirees have to compromise on what they can do. 41% feel they don't have the money to do the things they want. 13% of retired households are still paying off a mortgage. That is so hard in terms of cash flow. And even harder, 20% are paying rent, and 1 million parents are still financially supporting their adult children. I have three, so better not be me. Okay, and for future retirees, 50% of Kiwis aren't prepared for retirement. 34% could maintain their current lifestyle for 10 years plus on retirement savings. 70% think they'll need to work past retirement age. These stats speak to the lack of preparedness for the next generation. So, what can we do about it? And some options for funding retirement later. But as you can see, it's more important to start earlier if possible. So, in terms of options, you could work longer, downsize your home. You could factor in an inheritance. I always think it's a bit bad taste to factor in someone else dying to sort your finances. But if we're desperate, we will. Selling of a business, reverse mortgage, spending less in retirement. And it's really interesting, particularly for my clients in places like Auckland. Often they will say, well, I'll just downsize my home. I don't really have to worry about any of this. But it's so interesting in terms of when push comes to shove, when many people get to that point in time when they must downsize their home, generally speaking, that only funds 3 years of retirement. Why is that? Generally speaking, for most people, when they downsize, there are more people in the market competing for that slightly smaller, more affordable house. Therefore, they pay a little bit more than they anticipate. And in terms of that bigger property, less people in that market, so they don't get quite what they anticipate. So, again, for most people, that funds about 3 years. So, not quite the strategy that sorts this. And most people don't end up working as long as they intended, just through illness, etc. So again, lots of options. We need to make sure that you have as many as possible and that your hand is never forced in terms of your plan. And in terms of being okay with New Zealand super. And again, we don't know how long New Zealand super is sustainable for. We have an aging population. We have it at the moment. So New Zealand super will likely not be enough unless you're mortgage free, working until 65, not helping your kids, and living a really no frills lifestyle. So, again, that's really important to clock. And you really need to understand what is the solution to enjoying a comfortable retirement for you because everyone's different. And do you know how much you need to live that fulfilling retirement with choice? And at Enable Me, that comes down to crafting a wealth creation plan. And that plan brings together lots of different asset types. We do not play favorites. It also encapsulates a hold sell strategy that provides cash flow to meet financial goals for that comfortable retirement. And regardless of your number, the important aspect is to know that growing your wealth, it just creates options. Options for what you do during your retirement, options for where and how you live, options for helping your kids financially, if you so choose, um, options for the level of care you receive during retirement. You may create the option to retire early or scale back your hours. Or if you find you have to retire early, you get sick, lose your job, it's less likely to negatively impact your financial situation during your retirement. You can weather changes in circumstances, and it's about increasing your margin for things to go wrong and you still to be okay. And I'm sure all of us would love to have these types of options when you retire. And so, why would you settle for okay when you can do better? And a wealth plan for retirement should be flexible. It can't be lock and leave. We also need to ensure we build in really good buffers because rain will come. There's nothing surer, and we need to make sure that as part of your plan, you can hold your line for any eventuality. And it really helps propel momentum forward when you can enhance positive behavior and spending habits. It really makes a difference. And all of this is founded upon a really strong financial foundation. So you might be listening to all of this and thinking, "Oh, feels like a lot. So where should you start?" And I think for most people, that is securing your financial foundation. It's really understanding what you need for retirement. You've got to determine where your money might be coming from, and you've got to understand how you're tracking currently. And if there is a gap, you need to clock that gap, understand the quantum, and think about, well, how do I bridge that gap through strategy? And we have a rule of thumb. We believe a comfortable retirement includes roughly about 25 times your annual lifestyle cost saved. So, an anchor point for any wealth plan in our mind is that we understand together, what does a good life look like to you? What does it cost you? Because in effect, you need to grow that asset position to a point that feeds that when you're no longer working. Everyone has a different number. We understand yours, and that's our anchor. Because for us, and these are for our clients who retire at 65, we need that money to last for at least 25 years. So that's why we're timesing by 25. Non-negotiable that you're mortgage free and have financially independent kids. That's our rule of thumb when we talk about what we need for retirement. And remember, we talked about securing your financial foundation. It's like building a house, and the foundations are absolutely everything. You can't build a house on shaky ground, and you can't achieve financial success without solid money habits. Think of your habits as like the concrete foundation. You want them strong, so everything else stands tall. You don't need to be the rock to have financial discipline, but you do need to rock your habits and set goals, kind of like GPS coordinates for your money. Your financial goals are your map. Without them, it's like driving aimlessly and wondering why you never arrive. And think of that cash flow like grocery shopping. If you go in without a list, you'll end up overspending on things you don't need. When you don't keep track of where your money is going, mark my words, it's easy to lose control. And having a plan helps you avoid impulse buys and allows you to stay on track, leaving you enough for the things you actually need and want. And in terms of that debt and KiwiSaver, clear the clutter and make your money hustle. Get the right strategies in place. Honestly, it makes all the difference to make that money working as hard as possible for you. And for us, that mortgage management piece, a non-negotiable in terms of propelling you forward and mitigating the interest you might be paying back to the bank. For us, it's about being super strategic around everything you do. We're not just pulling one lever, we pull everything together, but that strong foundation allows us to propel you forward as fast as we can. And success starts with adapting your money beliefs and habits. Conditions, and I cannot emphasize this enough, lots of people wait to take action. So they wait almost like there will be a perfect point in time where the stars align, when your job is secure, which is tough in this economic environment. When their child leaves home, when your health stabilizes. I'll tell you right now, conditions will never be perfect. And I love that saying, best time to plant a tree was 25 years ago, second best time is today. And again, Waiting just means you have to work harder and longer than you really need to. And we often get the question, is it too late? It's never too late, but the earlier you start, the more options you will have on the table. And I need a lot of money to build my nest egg. That is absolutely yes. In terms of moving forward, even in the smallest increments, momentum moves and you have more options. And so, obviously, our preference is that you start as early as possible. I love this quote. Yesterday is not ours to recover, but tomorrow is ours to win or lose. And KiwiSaver, it definitely helps. Please ensure you're in the right KiwiSaver fund for you and you're getting the returns that you deserve. And again, nothing should be lock and leave. You should be assessing that at every point in time in terms of your plan. Really interesting though, average KiwiSaver balance for 56 to 60-year-olds in 2025 is 65,000. Average spend in retirement, according to the Massey University study, is about 76,000. So if you do have an average KiwiSaver balance and you're expecting that to fund retirement, we best be thinking of other strategies to complement that KiwiSaver. An example equation for Choice's retirement lifestyle, as we discussed before, is your lifestyle cost times 25 years. So in this example, if you think that a good lifestyle now costs you about 80,000 times 25 years, so 65 to 90, means that you'll need about 2 million. At the moment, we have New Zealand Super, 700,000. We're assuming that KiwiSaver in this example will give you about 365,000. So that's a gap of 934,000. You need to bridge in terms of your retirement strategy. And you might look at that number and you might think, eek, but I see that number and it's like game on. And you can see how granular we get in terms of really understanding what that gap is. And again, just looking at that default retirement projection, for the vast majority of New Zealanders, they buy their first home at about 35 and it takes them 30 years to get mortgage free. In terms of that KiwiSaver, on average, that lasts till about 69, which means there's a very long gap that you have to bridge in terms of money we need to come up with for you to live that happy life till 90. And the average gap is about $1 million. And again, $1 million, it does sound like a big number. It is absolutely accessible. And again, the earlier you start, the easier it is to bridge that gap. And again, just emphasizing a comfortable retirement rests on you being mortgage free, non-negotiable for all of my clients. It's one of your biggest cash outflows, and paying too much interest really does eat into that equity position into the future. And again, non-negotiable for my clients. But look how even just moving one thing, and remember for my clients, I'm trying to move everything, but just moving that one thing creates a lot more options for you into the future. So in this example, getting you mortgage free 10 years earlier means you can save faster, which means that your money lasts longer. So instead of you running out of money at 69 with your KiwiSaver and what you've managed to save because you're not paying and funding a mortgage and interest on that, your money lasts until 80. Still not quite 90, but still we moved one thing, and look at that difference in terms of options and living a good life in retirement. And this is what we want for you. And uh, we never let rest on our laurels. Again, never about just paying off a mortgage. Important component, but we're looking at everything. And again, in this example, we're layering on making sure that, yes, you're mortgage free as fast as you can, but also we're looking at that wealth creation piece. And for these clients, in this example, they bought an investment property which helped bridge that gap from 80 to 90. So again, it's about layering different options to make sure that your money lasts longer. And there are lots of options in terms of investment, and I can't emphasize enough, we do not play favorites in terms of options. It will just, for me, it always comes down to what will be the best option for you in the context of your plan and goals. And often it's a bit of several things. And again, lots of different options, risk, reward. Um, the right option depends on the problem you're looking to solve and your time frame. That feeds into what will serve you best. And there's a wee rule of thumb we always have. If your retirement gap is greater than 300,000, you're likely going to need to use leverage to build that. And what do I mean by leverage? And in my mind, there's two wonders of personal finance. First wonder is compounding interest. So when you have interest, when you have savings, you earn interest on interest. When you have debt, you pay interest on interest. So again, having that debt strategy is super important. But the second wonder is leverage. You leverage two ways. You leverage through business. Your effort plus any employee's effort gives you a greater gain, or you leverage through property. And that is the thing that makes property attractive. It's not that it gives you exponential gains. It just means you have a bigger asset that you have acquired using the bank's money that goes up in value. And again, in terms of numbers, I think this illustrates it really beautifully. 160,000 invested in managed funds at 6% is going to give you a return of 9,600. That same 160,000 as a deposit on an $800,000 property at 6% return gives you a return of 48,000. Again, not because it's miraculous, it's just because you've acquired a bigger asset that goes up in time. And we've got a wee example. Some beautiful clients that we've worked with, Jono and Catherine, couple ages 45 and 49. They've got available equity from their home. Their goal was to retire with $2 million. 55K and 60K respectively in KiwiSaver. They were scared to enter the rental market. I think it's best to wait until the economic turmoil dies down, which is true of lots of people. Problem with waiting is that the cycle ticks on and everyone jumps in at the same time when prices are escalating, and you've missed out on a chunk of gain that you could have realized if you'd started early. And it's tricky, right? You never have a crystal ball. And for lots of people, it's about doing the right thing and having the ability to hold it. And for them, the solution was all about getting clear on their retirement plan to quantify that shortfall, setting the property criteria to ensure they buy right, and understand the cost of waiting. And I think that's true of lots of my clients. I work with, I mean, for the last decade, I think I've worked with every kind of type of client. It's fascinating, but lots of people are quite risk averse. And what I've found with clients who are nervous to act, they are braver when they understand, well, what is the consequence of inaction? And for these clients, it was about understanding, well, they had lots of equity sat within their home. If they continued to hold that home, paying off the debt, that equity would just sit there until retirement, doing absolutely nothing. If they tapped into a property that spoke to them in terms of numbers and they held it, they had a few property cycles ahead of them, usually about 10 years. So that property would double in value. So if they didn't do that, that was the cost to them of inaction. And again, often that allows you to be braver in terms of strategy. So, in terms of options, it's never lock and leave, and you need to be assessing at every point in time, are my assets serving me? Is my capital working as hard as possible in terms of that end goal? So, if you have investment properties, are your properties still the right one to hold? I find initially when lots of clients come to me, we call them accidental rentals. It's whereby maybe it's their first home, maybe it's their second, but they've gone along to the bank and the bank has said to them, or their broker, and they've said to them, do you know you could keep your home when you upgrade to the next? And it feels like a good idea, but it never quite serves them in terms of numbers. For a start, it means that your debt position is wonky. Generally, the debt is higher against the home, and that's unproductive debt, and lower against the rental property, which means that you pay more tax effectively in terms of deductions. It also means that generally, if you have an accidental rental, usually it's an older property, so there's more repairs and maintenance, and sometimes the yield is compromised. So again, it's just lots of cash flow pressure. So again, the old adage of you never sell a property is not quite true. For my clients, they're certainly buying and holding, but they're holding to ensure they get the gain. And then they're looking at, well, has that served its purpose? And how could that equity serve me for that next cycle? And for lots of clients, when we're looking at, well, what's the right investment property for them to hold into the future? Often it's a new build property. Why is that? You get a master build guarantee for 10 years. That naturally de risks it from a repairs and maintenance perspective, which generally can be a risk around holding property, i.e., you need a new roof in year three and you've got to magic that out of cash flow. You can also borrow more when you buy a new property because you need a lower deposit in equity. And often it attracts a better tenant. And again, that's really useful in terms of cash flow stability into the future. And again, if you're looking at that property thinking, oh, I'm not sure if the numbers serve me, sell it and buy a new property, sell and invest elsewhere. Maybe it's in a region where you thought you would get great yields, but the capital gain is really sluggish because, again, there's not much drivers for economic growth. That feels like a lemon. And again, it's understanding how that serves you in the context of your broader plan. And it might be that it is serving you, but you need to be doing that assessment regularly. And if you have investments, and to be honest, most of my clients at some point in time will have property and funds. And again, it's just what will serve them best in the context of their plan. They're continuously reviewing their portfolio. Should they sell? They're assessing growth rates compared to alternative investments, comparing hold costs. They're understanding, should they liquidate assets to put towards something better? And if you are unsure about any of these questions, you need to seek qualified financial advice. And please, if you have money in the bank, often people think, well, that's safe. I'm being safe. But often when you have your money in the bank, it's not even keeping up with inflation in terms of returns because you're earning so little interest, and then you pay tax for the privilege of earning little interest on that interest. So again, yes, have buffers, really important, 3 to 6 months of spend, but over and above that, you need to get that money working as hard as possible for you. You really do. And if you have a mortgage and savings, I'm not happy with you. I'd like those savings to be offsetting the debt on the proviso that you can reaccess it going forward. Again, we're always assessing for our clients, how do we get that asset position working as hard as possible for you? And Often people come to me in retirement and it's uncomfortable when you've always been working, earning money, building assets, but you get to a point when you retire and you are usually eating into said assets to live that beautiful life in terms of retirement. And often that means that you need to be adjusting your strategy when you retire in terms of decumulation, and your strategy changes in terms of your cash flow needs. Maybe if you would like to help your kids early, um, the return you need versus the risk you're comfortable with. I'm very aware for my clients as they get older, their appetite for risk definitely gets lower. And I always say to them, I so acknowledge that we don't want to get it wrong at this juncture because we can't make it up in terms of timing, and I take that really seriously. And you need to be aware of that volatility that you can absorb. But I'm always encouraging my clients to understand their timelines because often it's useful to look at your retirement needs in terms of buckets. And for the cash flow you need to fund lifestyle or a car or travel, in the next 1 to 3 years, well, of course, you're not gonna be taking much risk on that. But the money you don't need between, 3 and 5, you can afford to take a little bit more risk in terms of that bucket. And that bucket of 5, 10 plus years, put it to good use. Make sure that works as hard as possible for you, because we're gonna be moving that money along in terms of the buckets, but you also wanna be careful you don't go too conservative too early and miss out on what you could be accumulating thereafter for you in terms of options and your money lasting. But also, that legacy piece is really important to lots of my clients. And in terms of decumulating your wealth, lots of tactics you can use for paying for your lifestyle in retirement. You could try and live off the returns from your investments, so you'll need a significant number to achieve that. You could just take it as a set amount, though that doesn't really take into account inflation, or you could take out a percentage, but again, that doesn't necessarily take in inflation or market conditions, or you could use the buckets, which I really like in terms of spread. It makes sense. And again, it's about understanding your numbers and your requirements so that you're confident in the right approach for you. And often there are phases of retirement in terms of redraw. And what I see for my clients is the first kind of 5 to 10 years, we are traveling, we are doing our bucket list activities, we're spoiling the grandees generally. Um, so that portion of retirement savings, as I said, invested in low risk. Somewhat of a honeymoon phase in years 1 to 2. We kind of bed in terms of what comes next. Next 10 years, often you're less active. Often I see rising health and kind of fixed costs. And so for that portion of money, we're invested in income and growth. The final years is generally that highest healthcare needs. We're considering legacy, etc. And for that piece, we're investing in growth assets, etc. So again, it's important to know your number, but also we're looking at that decumulation phase as well in terms of asset classes and stepping backwards when you are preparing for retirement. Often when there is a gap in terms of retirement, and remember when we said that gap was more than 300,000, but often when you are in that wealth creation phase, generally you're more leaning into property because you're leveraging and it's kind of turbocharging those returns. But as you get closer to retirement, we're equalizing in terms of, yes, we might have property, but we're also leaning into managed funds, etc., because that gives us liquidity can't sell a quarter of a house, but with managed funds, you could access it immediately. But also, that's beautiful spread of risk across different asset classes, geographic jurisdictions, etc., which I really like for clients. So, again, never lock and leave. And again, age and stage depends on where we lean. We do not play favorites. What is the problem we're trying to solve? We're putting numbers around that and we're executing on a strategy that speaks to you. And obviously, we're putting a lot of work and effort into this. You've worked really hard, you've been brave, you've invested. Please protect your assets. Please, it's so important. Ensure that you have adequate insurance to cover risk. And I always say there's a balance to be had of making sure you're covering off risk, but don't pay too much. That's the balance to be had. But it's so important, particularly when we're solving a problem. Generally speaking, we're relying on your income to fuel that strategy. If something happens and we don't have it, we need to be able to replace that. And insurance often can do that if you have the right insurance. Um, Often my clients will look at trusts in terms of protecting their position, particularly if they're in business and there's any risk related to that business. And again, it's what will serve you best in the context of your plan, but asset protection is super important. We're also looking as part of this holistic, broad plan the ownership structure of different properties. Should it be in a trust, a company? And again, that comes down to your goals, your cash flow. Relationship property agreements are really important. Non-negotiable for me when I'm working with clients who come together with unequal asset positions. We need to protect both parties, and generally speaking, the way you do that is you get a relationship property agreement acknowledging that different asset position. It could be joint progress thereafter, but you need to be pragmatic and protect that opening position. I always say, as well, as part of that protection piece, you need to be aware that inheritance isn't relationship property, and for some people, you might get inheritance. Um, you might choose to put that on your home mortgage with your partner. Could be absolutely the right thing to do, but as soon as you do that, that becomes joint matrimonial property. And again, there's ways to circumnavigate that. For most of my clients, I'd say, well, do a deed of acknowledgement of debt through your lawyer, repayable on demand, 0% interest, but you are ring fencing that amount. So if anything happens to the relationship, which hopefully will never happen, but again, being pragmatic could, you're ring fencing that for you and your children thereafter. So that's really important. And for lots of my clients, they would like to leave a legacy. Please have conversations with your family sooner rather than later. Again, trusts can be really useful. Not right for everyone, but can be really useful in terms of protecting beneficiaries. Um, ensure that you incorporate that legacy piece into your wealth building plan. And please, please, please only help others once you have covered your own retirement expenses. So often I see people who think they have more than they need, but on paper they actually don't when push comes to shove. And they've helped children into property, etc. And they are nowhere to be seen when they don't have enough. And they have no options, they have no time versus your children who do. I'm a mum of three. I want to help my kids, certainly, but I need to make sure that me and my husband are going to be okay first. Because again, they're young teenagers, they have time, we have less time, sadly. So again, it's about making sure that everything's encapsulated within that plan, and we're not being wafty saying we'd like to help the kids. We're putting some numbers around that to make sure that it eventuates. Grinds my gear that half of New Zealanders do not have wills. If you do nothing other than get a will for yourself, I will be happy after this presentation. get a will. Just do it. Go to your local lawyer. Just do it. Power of attorney, really important as well. Lots of people will say, well, I'm kind of youngish, kind of feel that's more relevant to my parents. It's not. Really important that if anything happens to you, um, everything's in place. So when that's horrible time, you and your family are going to be okay. So super important. And often when we're looking at that estate planning and options, we can factor in that rest home subsidies, etc., if anything was to happen. And in terms of key takeaways, get a will, that was easy. Know your number, understand how much you'll need and when you'll need it. Mind the gap. Your retirement gap in time frame shapes your strategy. It is not set and forget. If it is, it becomes irrelevant to you. Please make your money work. If you've got investments, make sure they're working as hard as they should. You assess everything. Manage funds, property, are they serving their purpose in the context of your plan? And plan for post-work life. Know how you'll manage your time and your finances once that paycheck stops. And please protect what you're building. Insurance isn't just for now, it's for protecting your future self and your plan. So, in terms of how does a coach like myself help? And we've got amazing coaches up and down the country who are crafting dream retirements for people every day of the week. So, we do this by accurately diagnosing your starting point, identifying your landing point. What is our goal? What is our retirement point? We step back and assess your capability in terms of cash flow and options, and we tie that into the strategy that will serve you to grow your wealth at the pace that you need to land at retirement. And again, I always try and make that landing pad as large as possible because I know stuff happens. And again, it's about having choice and never having your hand forced. That is what I want for my clients. And they have lots of different beautiful goals, but in my mind, it's always come down for my clients to two things. They want financial freedom, so they want to have more choice around the work they do, how long they work for, and they want to have security. They just do not want to worry about money. So at Enable Me, we've got an amazing wealth of expertise. So proud to walk alongside these coaches. They're absolutely exceptional. They bring so much to the table. And we all know structure, we all know strategy, of course we do. But I actually think a big component of our Enable Me client success is that we provide that external accountability. You always do better when you work with somebody else. You lift your game, you do what needs to be done, and you get there in the shortest amount of time. That's really important in terms of success and propulsion forward in terms of your wealth plan. So, next step on the financial scales. Think of this as a financial health check, but for your future self. It's 90 minutes with a coach. In that meeting, we'll assess your retirement gap. We'll get a clear, personalized plan in terms of your capability and next steps in terms of focus. If you book tonight, that 90-minute session is only 149. If you so, but you've got to book that tonight, scanning that QR code. Can't believe it's July 30th. Crazy. Tonight, time ticks on, doesn't it? How are we in July? Anyway, bookings made after this date will secure the consultation for 249. So we'll be sending you a recording tomorrow if you want to listen back to it. desperate times, but show it to your partner, etc. We'll send you a recording. So if you happen to watch this after the 30th, mention this webinar, Saving with Confidence, and we'll still discount it down to 249, but the super special is 149, because knowing where you stand, it's the first step to building a retirement you can actually enjoy. Book now, back yourself. Your future deserves it. Right, I've tried to leave lots of time for Q&A because we've got some wonderful questions submitted previously. So Jessica, hit
Thank you
me.
so much for another great webinar, Katie. I'll go through the questions that came through live first.
Perfect.
So first one, in terms of home loan approvals from a bank, do you have any stats on the maximum age they would lend?
It depends in terms of purpose for lending. So generally they're stricter if it's for a home that you live in versus an investment property. And there are differences in terms of lending and age from different banks. Some are a lot stricter. So it really depends on bank and type of lending generally in terms of property. Great question.
Thank you so much. Next question is, so the figure quoted on how much you have to have on average saved by 65 3 years ago was 1 million. And now you're suggesting it's a lot more to have an enjoyable lifestyle with choices. What would you say that number is now? 1.5 million or 2 million?
Yeah, such a good question. And it's so individual. And how, remember, you figure out what that right number is for you, understand and figure out, well, what is your life spend now? Take out the mortgage, take out any life insurance. If you have children, take out any of that. That'll be a really good basis of what you might need. And again, Massey University study says it's about 76,000. It creeps up obviously with inflation, it gets higher. And also for me, I always want to have and build in buffers and options for my clients. It's not about being bare bones about this and just scraping by. It's, well, how do I ensure there's a margin of error? So again, hard to say averages. I can give you that 76,000 per year, but I'm more interested in for you what your lifestyle would look like in terms of your aspirations. So that's important for you to know that. And if you don't, reach out and we'll help you do it.
Thanks so much, Katie. There's been a follow-up question with that one. I'm 40 and in 25 years' time, I'm looking at 2 million, or are we needing to double it by then?
Uh no, no, not necessarily. We will have to adjust it slightly for inflation. Um, but you have time. But crack on and lean into that wealth creation piece. Ensure you have a surplus, you capture it, and you channel that as productively as possible. If you're 40, unequivocally, you're leaning into property because you've got a couple of property cycles ahead of you. And again, you're looking at making sure that your KiwiSaver is doing what it should. And again, at 40, you've got 25 years till retirement. That should be in high risk because you can't, if you bought your home, you can't access that till 65. So again, we're looking at everything to make sure that, again, it works in tandem to land where you need to. Next question.
Thank you. And what is the advantage or disadvantage between setting up a company or a trust for managing retirement?
Mm. And a company and a trust doesn't manage retirement. Generally speaking, it you set up a trust to hold assets and protect them. That is the purpose of a trust. Generally speaking, when people set up companies, it is to conduct a business. And for some people, that business might be getting rent from a property. So that's generally when you would lean into that company piece. And when you're looking at, for example, ownership of rental properties, for example, lots of people these days will lean into company ownership versus trust ownership because the default tax rate of a trust is 39 versus the company tax rate is less. So again, slight nuances in terms of purpose, and it comes down to plan and the goal that you're trying to achieve through that entity structure. And accountants and lawyers are super helpful as part of that discussion as well.
Thank you so much, Katie. Probably two more, time for two more questions, so I'll quick fire. Is there anything I should take into consideration as a single person preparing for retirement from a newly separated single mother?
Mhm. You're the plan now. That means prioritize your own financial security. I think that's the best gift you can ever give your kids into the future. And please make sure you're protected. Make sure that you've got insurance. Please update your wills, etc. And let's make sure that you also have good buffers. So again, you're sleeping at night, your hand isn't forced. And I really encourage you to rebuild with clarity. Know your goals, what you have and what you need, and don't delay investing. Like time is your best friend now. You're gonna do great.
Thank you.
You don't have anyone
Um,
else. You don't have anyone else dragging you down. You're in control. It's great.
Great answer, Katie. Okay, so last question, which is a really nice one to end on, so we can talk to like the process for those who want to book with us. But the question is, can I choose a coach when I book a consultation, or are they selected for me?
You could request a coach. Uh, I stand by behind every single one of our coaches. They are exceptional at getting results. They really care, they're super clever, and they really know what works. So I stand behind every single coach that we have. But you can jump on our website as well, enable.me, and you can click on lots of faces, and there's lovely little descriptions around all the different coaches as well. We have two types of coaches, strategic coaches like myself. We meet clients initially, we set the strategy, we walk alongside clients, but it's the performance coaches who ensure they hold our clients to account to get results. So we actually pair clients with two coaches to ensure that we wrap around that support and we get the results they deserve.
Nice, thank you so much, Katie. That's probably um, about the time we have left. I'm very sorry if we haven't got to anyone's questions, but please do book in with us and bring those questions to the consultation. But I'll leave it with you, Katie, to wrap up.
Awesome. So thank you for sharing this evening with us. We hope you got lots out of it and be brave, take action, because that's the thing that's going to move the dial for you and your family. All the very best. Take care.